Hi, gang. So, like I've been telling you since we started to talk about Lord of the Flies, you will, at the end of the novel, have a research paper to write. All right? We already discussed some research terms, primary source, which is what you're writing about. In our case, our primary source is the novel Lord of the Flies. We also discussed secondary sources. And secondary sources we will be gathering as we progress through the novel. Secondary sources are defined as sources that are written, or articles rather, or essays or criticisms that are written about the primary source. So when we have an article that offers an analysis of perhaps characters in Lord of the Flies, that would be considered a secondary source. And like I already said, we will be gathering secondary sources as we progress throughout the novel, in hopes that at the end of the novel, when it is time to write our research paper, we will already be well underway. Okay, so if we go to our Google Drive and you see all my folders, I have to open I'll use my period 8 folder as an example, even though period 9 students, if you click on the period 9 folder, you will see what I currently see on my screen. Open Lord of the Flies, and inside you see one secondary source already. And it is right where my cursor is. It is from Common Lit. We read it before break. And it's an article that discusses what makes good people do bad things. And while this article does not specifically mention Lord of the Flies, the content therein is most definitely relevant. So over the next couple days in class, we will be looking at this article in terms of what details throughout apply to the novel. And of course, you haven't started to read, so I'll have to direct that conversation. Knowing that this is, knowing that this is a secondary source that could be eventually cited or used within our research paper, we want to get started on officially keeping track of our sources for our paper. And the way we do that is to make what's called source cards. I already have a file here that I'll be sharing with you. And when you open it, you will have to choose File and make a copy in order to have your own. However, let me go ahead and open this up. For the past few years, we have made our source cards in a digital format using Google Slides. You do not have to do this. I can gladly give you a stack of 3x5 note cards. And on those 3x5 note cards, you can do exactly what we will do on our digital source cards. If you are more comfortable having the cards in your hands and writing on them by hand, that is absolutely fine. You just tell me. So I created this template, and you can see in this file, I duplicated this slide, at least 7 times. If you run out and you need to duplicate, all you have to do is right-click on any one of the slides. And remember, on a Chromebook, to right-click, you drop 2 fingers to the touchpad. Excuse me. And we have a menu wherein we can find duplicate slide. So you can continue to do that as many times as necessary. In the top right of the article that is in our Google Drive, What Makes Good People Do Bad Things. In the top right of that article, we already assigned a number. And I told you that I would explain later why we do that. And this is something that tends to seem silly to students, but you have to think of it in terms of, what if you were doing a much larger research project with 15 or 20 sources? It's easier to assign each source a number, and I'm just reading right here what I have in the top right, and place that number in the top right of the article. If you have a digital article, use Kami to make a big and bright number in the top right hand corner of that digital file. And then when we make the source card, that same number will go in this box. Then I created a box wherein you can overwrite my text here when you need to, okay? You can overwrite it and start to type whatever you need to do. This box will contain eventually your properly formatted bibliography for each source. And Mrs. Barron has pretty awesome papers in the library that enable you to see an example, fill in the blank, and a lot of these you and I will do together. So as we progress throughout our novel, we will continually gather secondary sources that may or may not end up being used or cited within your papers. And as we do so, we give each one a number. Number goes in the top right of your source card and in the top right of your PDF if that secondary source is in fact digital. And then we properly format the bibliography also right here in the center of the card. So that covers your first couple steps. To recap, what are primary sources, what are secondary sources, and how do we keep our secondary sources organized as we progress through the gathering process. We will also have one of these source cards for the primary source as well. So really it's, how do we go about organizing all of our sources, both primary and secondary, as we progress through the gathering process? Please let me know if you have any questions. You know that if you have a question, ask right away. Don't let yourself fall behind or get confused.